Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Drinks with Johnny. Man, I'm so excited today because I'm joined by a childhood hero of mine, Mr. Dave Ellefson. How the hell are you today, my man?
Dude, I'm doing good, Johnny. Thanks for having me on the show, man. I appreciate it.
No, man, thank you. Thank you for coming on today. I mean, we just met each other, actually, for the first time in, what was that, like 3-4 weeks ago? When I was
Yeah, it was like
Phoenix?
a month ago, right? You guys came through Phoenix. My good buddy in tech, Willie Gee, working for you. And he said, hey, you want to come down? And I said, of course. And it's funny because, we've done shows together over the years, and as often happens, like I remember one, I think it was in Canada or something, right? And the stage was way over there. It was like golf carts or a van. And, the stages were next to each other, but, our dressing rooms were there. But as we're on, you're backstage. As we come back, you're driving to the stage. So that's been most of our acquaintances, like probably waving at each other from a golf cart, So
Exactly, man. Yeah, no, that's funny. Yeah, Willie Gee. Shout out to Willie Gee again. So he was your tech. I knew he came from the Megadeth camp before, but I couldn't remember if he told me he was working for you or one of the guitar players. I couldn't remember.
Well, so he worked for Dave in the 2002. Dave broke Megadeth up for his own personal reasons. 2004, he puts it back together. I'm not there with that, and I came back in 2010. And it was funny, Willie and the drummer, Sean Drover, and then his brother was also the guitar player for a bit during that season. And those guys, they kept bugging Dave all the time, get Ellefson back, And you know how it is in bands when there's personal rubs or you've got something that you need to talk about, but you just can't get together to talk about it. And it's like, it didn't work, And it's funny because Willie, I never knew the man before until I went back to the group in 2010. But he even hit me at NAMM. I guess it was NAMM 2010. The big four shows were announced, the plaque back there.
Wow.
And Willie was texting me because Dave was going to go jam with Dean Guitars at the Grove or something. And I guess James Lomenzo, who was playing bass at the time, they couldn't find him. And he goes, and he's always kind of, Mr. Ellefson, that's very kind. When he texted, hello, Mr. Ellefson. Would you be able to come? Hey, we know Willie. Hey, right. So Mr. Ellefson, would you come over to the Grove and jam a couple songs? I said, of course, no problem. In fact, I even have a bass in my car. Just let me know. I'm here to help out, and that never, panned out, but it was literally a couple days later, I come home and my son Roman, he goes, Dad, did you just read the message that the Megadeth Slayer American Carnage tour isn't going to happen? It's postponed because Tom Araya's got to go get a neck surgery. And I could kind of, you kind of tell when things are falling into place, sort of the divine or the universal, method of how even rock and roll operates, So I was kind of going, all right, I guess this is looking like I'll probably end up being back in Megadeth because Dave had been texting me a bit before that. And then so finally, I was sitting right over here having dinner. February 2nd is my son's birthday. So this is a week after NAMM or something. And the Megadeth announced the 20th anniversary Rust in Peace tour was coming up. And ironically, our mutual friend, Mike Portnoy, we had been in New York a couple days earlier. I had a little heavy metal tribute band called Hail with Andreas Kisser, Tim Ripper Owens. Portnoy was playing drums that week, and myself. And we were going up to Eddie Trunk and to do some interviews. And he goes, dude, that's fucking bullshit. You're not on that fucking Big Four show. And it was just because, Mike's a fan, as you know. He's I don't know if he's a drummer or a fan first. I don't know. They're both.
He's a fan of music first, man. That guy's an encyclopedia of knowledge on music.
Yeah, right? So we'll get to him, of course, in a minute, since we share a common thread with him as bass players and him. But yeah, so I walk in here and it was a BlackBerry back in 2010. It wasn't even an iPhone yet. It was blinking, and I pick it up and it's Willie Gee, Mr. Ellefson. Could you please call me? I wanted to see if you'd come back to Megadeth. And so, Willie's been a good brother to us all, and of course, a good brother to our Big Four community. And, him, he bleeds heavy metal. And when he's in, he's all in. He doesn't just take a job to make a buck. If he likes you and he likes the gig, he's in. And so, but yeah, that's the history. So when he hit me about working with you, I was like, dude, that's fucking cool. I said, that's great. I love those guys. I'd love to come down. And like I say, we'd never really hung and broed down, and I got to chat with you and Brian and even Matt for a bit, and just to bro down. That was a great night. In fact, I'll tell you this much, man. After that night, I came home and I hadn't been playing my bass much for, I don't know, about a month. I was on tour all summer. I came home. I was kind of sick. I had to heal my throat. I've been singing a lot. Of course, I do all the fucking interviews, so I'm the guy doing all the talking, you know. So I never shut up.
Players. That's the job of the bass players. That's why I decided. That's why I decided one day. I'm like, hey, I'm doing all the talking anyway. Why don't you just come over and listen to my podcast if you want to hear what I have to say?
The singer's in the mood. The guitar player's hungover. Fuck, get the bass player to do it, right? You know, or whatever. Call it what it is, right? So God love them, you know. But so we're probably the same guy, you know, but you and me. But so it's funny how but after your show and after talking to you guys, man, I came home, I picked up my bass. In fact, it's funny, I bought this, got a few of them here, but I bought this Peavey T40, right?
Oh, wow.
Which was like the original, it's a 1981, right? And I bought it, it's heavy as hell.
It's beautiful.
I mean,
what kind of wood is it? What kind of wood did it?
You know, dude, it's so heavy. I mean, you could literally get in a street fight and you would for sure win. I don't know what it's. I don't know if it's all. You know, usually I guess Fenders, right, or Music Mans and stuff are mostly alder and ash, right? Mm-hmm. But this fucking feels like oak. So heavy. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then I guess
I was just curious because I think we did Ashburn. What? I don't remember the wood. But around 2010, I went with Schecter and started doing my own signature basses. And the wood that we use on that one too it's a heavy bass. Like running around, I make the joke here, but it's like it's gonna take a toll on my back eventually. It's like a 10-pound bass when you're running around for 2 hours, man.
You're looking at your future. My back, trust me, dude. I walk in the office and some days I look at the basses, I go, that's just going to fucking hurt me. I don't feel like doing that today. You know what I mean? Because my back, in fact, I go to the trainer and we specifically work on areas of the body to try to strengthen it before I go on the road. Low back, L4-5, SI, C1, 2, 3 up in the neck, and then, and even
because the basses are not light. They're not like guitars, man. They got to have a little bit thicker, heavier wood on them, man.
Dude, I picked up Dave's fucking Flying V one time. I was over on a sound check and Willie, I had it out there and I picked it up. I go, are you kidding me, dude? This thing weighs like this much. It's like a cup. There's no wood on a Flying V. I'm like, I don't want to hear any complaints about anyone fucking having neck problems. Like, you and me were lugging these 12-pound basses around.
Dude, it's a real thing, though. So, yeah.
They got it good.
After that night, you were saying you went back and you picked up that Peavey.
Dude, because it's funny about this Peavey. It's heavy as I'll get out, but there's magic in it, man. I pick it up and songs fall out, and I don't know if you're like this, but I have instruments sitting around. Of course, I do the Jackson thing like you do, Schecter. So I have things made for me, things I've designed and whatnot, and they're my Road Warrior basses and stuff, but sometimes they don't always have a song in them. It'll be the most unsuspecting instrument that has a song in it, like it'll be the Peavey, or I'll pick up like the Rickenbacker 4001 and suddenly that's the one that's got a song in it. And no, my attitude, I'm not a bass collector. And certainly my Jacksons have songs in them, of course, but just kind of the unsuspecting. When I'm grinding and practicing and it's a work tool, in fact, this is not one of my basses. It's actually just some Indonesian thing that they made that I love. I actually had to put the EMGs in it and get it all tricked up.
Yeah, those are the EMG. Yeah, got those.
Yeah, I just had to put them in with the whole BQS and the whole active thing. And it really, just went through this. And, I bought a couple of these Marshall mini stacks, back when we got our money from Capitol in the 80s. We had 3 of those, me, Dave, and then I had a bass one. Dave and Chris Poland, I guess, or Jeff Young maybe had the guitar ones. And for a while, me and Slash were hanging out and he had a red one. So he brought his over to my apartment. So we had like this back line of like 4 awesome Marshall mini stacks in my apartment. So mine was kind of gray, Slash's was red, and then we had 2 black ones. So it was like this ultimate like fucking,
and you guys would just jam in the apartment like that?
Jam out, get high, write songs, party, jamming. Yeah, it was good. He had just come off Appetite for Destruction. and all of his big money hadn't shown up yet. I mean, he was starting to get well funded, but he was just living in like an apartment behind Tower Records, man. Slash is just he was just so unassuming, you know. I remember him and Steven Adler came over to my apartment, that same apartment about, I don't know, 9 months earlier when me and my girlfriend were living there, and it's all furnished and nice. And of course, this is album 3 for me, and you know, and I grew up in a good family, so you know, you buy a couch, you buy a piano, you know, you put dishes in the cabinet, you know, and you know, you live that life, right? So my apartment's pretty nice, right? And I was in Hollywood, and I remember Slash and Adler came over, and they're like, "How did you get all this?" I'm like, "You drive around and you'd see where it says for rent, and you'd go rent an apartment." And so, but like, where did you got all this? And I was like, well, you go to the store and you buy it, you know, or you have your chick.
It was a foreign concept to them.
And then they're like, you have a car? I'm like, yeah, I got a car now. How'd you get that? They're like, well, go to the car dealer. You know, you try a car out, right? And I think those guys, you know, I mean, it's everything we love about Guns N' Roses, especially in that day. I mean, they were like such like sort of like Hollywood gutter snipes. You know what I mean? They were just They were the ultimate true fucking dark. Not dark in a bad way, but just, you know, the ultimate sex, drugs, and rock and roll, Hollywood rock and roll band, you know? So to live you know, I remember going to Bobby Blotzer's house from Rat one time, and he lived down to like Redondo Beach, you know, and he had this big Yamaha endorsement. Rat was headlining arenas, really killing it, you know? Yeah. And I got to go down there, and I'm like, fuck, man, he's got his bitchin' cars, probably a Porsche, whatever. He's got his Yamaha endorsement. I mean, he's got like jet skis and fucking drum sets and mixing consoles.
Wait, hold the phone. So when they were giving away the endorsements back in the day, Yamaha, that is, they obviously have instruments as well. But you're saying they were sponsoring them with jet skis and some of the toys that Yamaha makes
everything, the whole nine. And you know what? Peavy used to do that too. You know, I ran our part of Peavy's artist relations from 2002 to 2010. And, you know, there's a guy back in the day, the 80s, kind of the glory day, you know, they would do the same thing, man. There's guys, Brett Michaels, and these guys would be like, fuck, Peavy would just back a truck up to my house, and it'd be like a recording studio and PA, you know, and all this stuff. So, yeah, it's not like it is, you know, in our day now, right?
Well, now it's like, well, no, I've got a great deal with Schecter. Love them. Love that I was able to create a bass literally from scratch and work with them. To get exactly what I wanted. So I'm very happy with the instrument part, but I didn't know, you know, until just now, I was, you know, this many days old that everyone says on the internet now, that like they were, Yamaha specifically would be giving away jet skis based on an artist who's in the music industry. Like that's wild to me. Like that's a different beast.
Yeah, well, you know, double platinum in that day. And again, you're a platinum artist. You got into the wire. You guys were able to make
We were like the last ones, man. We like
you were the last.
Right in there.
You know, it's funny because I was talking to the singer from, you know, you guys are of an era. Like you, Lamb of God, Shadows Fall, you know, kind of that 2000s era of bands, right? And obviously you guys became
I love the deep
Metallica.
pull of Shadows Fall there, man. Throw out to Shadows Fall. Good old boys, man. Took us out years ago.
And it was the singer. We were sitting outside while we were waiting for you guys to finish your meet great. Yeah, he was there, and we were talking about, you know, just kind of, you know, talking about the whole thing. And of course, you know, outside of maybe Jason Bittner, and I guess John went over to Anthrax. So a couple of those guys, you know, kind of stayed in the game a bit. But, you know, look, unless you're at a certain level, as you and I have been able to enjoy, it's like, you know, you play rock and roll and then you go home to your job, even today, you know, or, you know, it's a whole different deal. And you know, it's funny. I just bought some plaques for Metal Allegiance, right? Which is our, you know, band with Portnoy again. His name pops up here.
Yeah.
You know,
he's gonna be threaded throughout this conversation.
He crosses over, right? So anyway, we you know, we're going to do our 10th annual show at the House of Blues in Anaheim coming up here in January during NAMM, right? And so Mark Mengy, you know, the my founding partner of that thing, you know, he one day sends us like a thing, say, hey, check it out, boys, we can get these plaques. It's for like 5 million streams, which, to Avenged Sevenfold and Megadeth isn't much, but it's for a new band, it's a thing, right? And so
That's
it's like, fuck, I can't.
that's rad. I didn't even,
It's not bad, right? So like the
it's pretty
gold
good.
records, that I have here, like you have in your house, I'm sure, real gold and platinum, meaning million, 500,000, like real kind of numbers.
Right.
Like now we're celebrating 5,000 stream or 5 million streams, and I'm just like, so this is where this has gone, is to this whole.
And you don't really know, how that breaks down and gets back to you as far as royalties go.
I have no idea. In fact, Brian said it the best after you and I chatted. We're out in the parking lot, and he goes, let's face it, it's a broken business, but somehow we all stay in it. I thought that was a good way to put it. It's a broken business, and that you just hit it, man. It's like streams. It sounds cool, but like, what is it, and how do I buy groceries with that? How does that work?
Right? No, I mean, somebody knows. I mean, that's the thing. When you look at how they can look at all the what's the word I'm looking for? Analysis of the user. They have more access directly to what a user is doing on a regular basis in all these apps, not just music, movies, TV, everything like that. The fact that they can't tell you, they being the powers that be, whoever it is, tell you exactly how it breaks down to get your cut of that stream is mind-boggling, because they have all the analytics. That's what I was looking for, analytics.
Well, you and I probably are on Ryan Downey's email list, right? Our friend Ryan manages Hunter.
I went on his Seek and Destroy podcast a few years back. So
yeah, great guy. So he's got that email list that breaks all this shit down. And even still, I don't get it. You know what I mean? Because it's like when I saw, new Metallica record comes out, the most recent one, 72 Seasons, and it sold 150,000 copies. I'm like going, oh no, we are all in trouble if Metallica is only selling 150,000 copies, right? And then of course that moves on, and of course with it is gazillions of streams, just like you guys. I mean, look, you guys are the Metallica of your generation. Your band became that. Lamb of God kind of became the Pantera. Trivium's Megadeth. I don't know if I had to, Shadows Fall.
I think you're putting together the next big four, actually, without realizing.
Get on it, brother. We can't do it anymore. There's no more Slayers, so it's over to you, my friend. Take the baton.
We'll find something. Yeah, absolutely.
That's actually a great idea, dude. You might have actually just stumbled onto the next big fucking summer shed tour next summer.
I've definitely talked about it. I'm friends with Matt and all the guys you just mentioned, for the most part, because we grew up together doing this. Like Matt Heafy was on the show a couple years ago, and we discussed that, because I was like, man, I think you and I would be on this bill. Who else would it be if we're fantasy booking? Like, what would that be like? And
what's funny, Dragon Force even came out around that time, and who would Dragon Force be? They would be like, if I had to make it, a correlation, I don't know, would they be? I mean, they're just so. I went and saw them the other day.
And shreddy. I mean, is it like a? I don't even know, man.
Like Annihilator, or I don't know what it would be. They're just so.
I think they're just different, man, which is a good thing, right?
Yeah. They kind of. I mean, they're of your sort of high school class, if you will. You know what I mean? Whatever class of 2004 or 5.
Yeah, the one and only Ozfest we did, they were on it.
Yeah, and I saw them the other day. They were so fucking good, man. I mean, between those two guitar players, and Herman's like a Matt. They're gamer guys. They're really into the whole, that whole gaming world and stuff. But it's like their licks, and Sam doing it while drinking a beer, and and it's just, and their little bass player, the Alicia, great, super cool. I thought, cool look to have her in the band. I love that new song that they have, that Doomsday Party, and they did it, and they did a video where they dress up like she dresses up like me. I'm like their sort of thrash metal icon. She told me that there's a Sinister Gates looking somebody in there, and she said, she goes, that's my guitar, actually. That's my Sinister signature model, right? You can they put it together, and then there's some doom metal dudes and some stuff, and the whole idea was they're kind of giving their homage to their heroes, Avenged and Megadeth, and
That's awesome,
whoever
man.
else.
I didn't realize that. I'll have to check that out.
Check it out.
Cool.
It's really good, man. So and the bass line's killer, man. It's really, really good. It's kind of like a Kiss, I Was Made for Loving You, in the modern day. It's this kind of like funky, really groovy Motown kind of bass line or something.
Little walkie, right?
Yeah, you'd like it. You definitely dig it.
That's the kind of shit I like, man. But since we're already on the topic of bass playing and shit, like let's for the 4 or 5 listeners that are bass players out there right now that are tuning in to hear this, I just want to say, like, we talked a little bit about it in Phoenix, and I was telling you how I grew up transcribing a lot of your stuff, man. It's like absolutely, as I said, I still warm up with a little bit of Countdown to Extinction, the bass riff there, and
so which one? Do you want
Dawn Patrol?
Can you hear this? Is this? I don't know if there's.
It's not really coming across.
So if the
it's the intro, the high riff.
That one.
That's the one, but I will. We can't hear it.
Yeah,
it's not coming.
Can't hear it. Okay. Yeah. I should probably no. I'd have to turn it up too loud because the amp is way over there, and I got earbuds in. So.
Well, isn't that how you met Dave? Playing your bass too loud?
Yeah. I got to tell Michael Anthony that story at NAMM one year. I said, "Hey, listen, man, I owe you a big thanks." I told him the whole origin story of me living in this apartment under Dave, and I said I was playing bass. Dave seems to remember it was Running with the Devil. I don't know if I was, so let's just go with that. And then he and I met a couple days later over some beer, and we started Megadeth. And so thanks for helping me pass the audition. And he was laughing. He said, he goes, "Well, at least it was an easy bass line." So
I will say, especially for Michael Anthony, who's an incredible bass player. It is like, it seems the more simplistic part, but then when I was talking to Brandon Seiler years ago of Atreyu. He's like, it does seem like it's the easiest thing ever, but if you have to do that for the entire song and be dead nuts on that, don't, and not lose your place, there is actually a little bit of skill to that, to figuring that out,
Jason Newsted said that about, when I remember when they're doing the Black Album, about just saying, "Hey, man, something like, just give me some eighth notes, and really, can you pound them out?" And Bob Rock, so he's new to the band. Now, I knew Jason because they used to, when he was in Flotsam and Jetsam, they'd always open for us when we came through Phoenix. And then he got the gig, obviously, Metallica. But, the pressure's on now, because it's one thing to be a fan of somebody. It's a whole other to jump into the hot seat, and now you're the guy. And so obviously Jason was a different player from Cliff, Fingers to Plectrum and stuff. But it's funny that it's so true. I mean, Bob Rock, thank God they got Bob to do the Black Album for all the reasons, because the songs are great, the production's amazing, just everything about it is just it's the gold standard, right? But also from a bass point of view, he put not just bass guitar, but he put low end in their mix in a way that band had never had before, and really nice and warm. And, we know what that's like making records. That's what I was telling you, watching your right hand playing and then I even the next couple of days, I was watching some of your videos and stuff. Cause to me, Nightmare is just one of my favorites, and that was the first time I saw you play when Portnoy was in the band. We should have you should take a drink every time we say
every
Portnoy.
time. Every time Mike Portnoy gets let me crack my drink real quick.
There you go. I'm drinking coffee and water. Here you go. But cheers. All right.
Yeah. Cheers.
There you go. Cheers to Portnoy.
I'm drinking a THC seltzer anyway, so it's not
perfect.
Booze,
we should probably take 6 drinks because I think we've mentioned him that much so far.
You got to get caught up.
But he played on your record and invited me down to see the show, and I thought that was so rad, dude. When you had that guy that gets up and then jumps off the truss and was
the guy the hanging.
Oh, dude, that was about as Alice Cooper 1974 as you could get, man. Dude, I mean, that was.
We loved having that, and that's a great pull there with Alice Cooper. I think it was very much that as well. But without going too far, but the guy that used to do that for us passed not too long ago. Actually, we found word. I think it was like a year or so ago.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it was a real bummer. Called him Cowboy. Rest in peace, Cowboy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a fun gig. We tried to get a bunch of people to do that. Yeah. Well, it was a crew guy too. He was one of the stagehands. So it was like,
can you imagine if that's the VIP experience, right? You get to jump off the stage, jump off the,
people want to do it, man.
Experience.
People want to do it. Cowboy was the only one nuts enough to do it. You go up there on those, you think it's like, oh, I could do that. You go looking up at it, like, go walk up there in those trusts and tell me you're going to feel comfortable jumping off.
Well, the funny thing was, I remember because I was standing out there talking to Mike, and then and we met briefly. He introduced us as you guys were coming in the dressing room and stuff.
Right. Then I went out before we went on the show. That was like that. Yep. It's in Phoenix, around Phoenix where you live. What is that venue? Because it has like that long park belt or something along the side.
They call it the Tempe Town Lakes area, is what it was. Yeah, and it was kind of this big grassy knoll area, and then then they had some trailers.
Right. That was the first time we briefly met, as I recall.
Yep. And so I went out front. I was talking to Marlene, Mike's wife, and hanging out. And and then I remember because Cowboy, now they know who he is. He was laying down. He didn't notice it. You're sitting on stage, kind of house music's playing. You're thinking, okay, band's going on. I was sitting on over. This guy gets up on the truss. He like gets up, and he's kind of walking around, and maybe he's really playing it up like he just woke up, right? And then all of a sudden, like just jumps off and of course hangs himself and swinging. You know, if anyone didn't see it, it's worth finding some video of it. It was fucking so metal. But I was like, no, that's fucking awesome, man. So. First impression, Paul Stanley said that, and we should probably take a drink because Paul, there's another good dude, right?
Oh yeah, I got to see his Motown band at Chris Santos's wedding last year.
Oh, the Soul Station thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So there was, How was that?
Fucking incredible, man. I had I think we talked a little bit about it before, but I'm a huge Motown fan too. So, and he's got like all the. It's Paul Stanley, so he's got like all the best players and band director. I don't remember any of their names. It's the only time I got to see it, so I apologize to all that.
Well, it was a wedding.
Like really, I remember when he was riddling off their resume basically in between songs of who they were, the band, and he's like, I'm just here because I'm a Motown fan and I can maybe sing some of these songs. These guys are the ones that put it all together. So it was really cool, and he did kill it. I mean. There's some Otis Redding in there that he just nailed, and I was like, "That's sick."
Well, he said
almost
something.
Liked it better than Kiss. I know that's going to be sacrilegious, but I almost liked it better than Kiss.
Well, it's funny. I saw them the third time on this End of the Road tour. My buddy had hit me and said, "Hey, you want to go see Kiss?" I said, "Yeah, sure, why not?" So it was great, and he bought the whole Paul Stanley stage smash guitar VIP package thing, right? So I was just I'm kind of hanging back because I know the Kiss guys and we've done shows with them and stuff, so I'm kind of hanging back just out of respect. It's like, let the fans be at the front. And he's like, dude, come up here, get in the pit. I'm like, really? Should I don't know, I should put my hair back. I don't know, what should I do? So I'm like, all right, well, fuck it, I'm gonna go down in the pit and watch Kiss, and at that point I was like, I'm just gonna go be a fan, because I really am a fan first and foremost, and they're I will always be a student of Kiss. Let's put it this way. I have studied them. The first time I saw them, and when I was 13 years old, when my mom took me to see them, back in Minnesota, I just looked at it like it was like this rocket ship or this jet airplane. I'm going, how in the hell? How do they do that? Like, and I had my little bands. I had a little Cessna, right? If they were a jumbo jet, I was a Cessna, right? And I'm going, I got to how do they do this? And I swear to God, Johnny, I've spent my life's pursuit, figuring out how that's done. Right. And of course, then I got to do it. Now you do it, and see Metallica do it, and Slipknot. And, so now you and me are doing it. Right. But, there's always that band where you study them and you're just like, these guys, are the shizba. And, to this day, I mean, Paul said one thing that was great. He said, you don't ever remember the whole show. You just remember moments of the show. So the whole point of the Kiss show is to create moments that you remember, right? The breathing fire, he flies out to the audience, Cowboy jumps off and swings, right? So that's where I was going with this. It was a moment, right? Because you don't remember the whole show. You don't remember every note, every move, and everything.
If you do, you're not having a good enough time.
Yeah, right, exactly. So that's the thing that with Kiss. Because, it's funny because it was somebody brought it up. They said, think about it. Until Kiss came along, nobody even had a drum riser. Like the Who, drums are on the floor. Led
Yeah.
Zeppelin, the drums are on the floor. Once Kiss came along, drum riser. We all have drum risers, right?
I think Mike. Hey, another Portnoy. I
There we
think
go.
Mike told me that when he came on the show years ago. I got to have him back on now, but yeah.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, they brought the theatrics to the rock world. I mean, it was them and Alice Cooper, as we mentioned too.
Yep.
That was it.
And putting picks on the mic stand. I mean, we all do that now because Kiss did it. Like they were the first ones, right? And then Cheap Trick did it. Now, of course, we all do it.
Yeah.
Pyro. I don't know if anybody had pyro before Kiss.
I couldn't. Not that I know of.
Not that I know of. And I mean, I was young back when they were coming out, but I don't remember anyone that had fucking pyro, and also the wall of amps. Now people had kind of done it, Woodstock and Jimi Hendrix had, 3 Marshalls, but to have like, I got my Kiss lunchbox over here, Kiss Alive. And it's, when you see that, you're like, come on.
Right.
And it's funny, the other day when I saw him, right when I went out before the show started, I walk out. And on the back of Kiss Alive, there's a whole arena full of people, and they're all sitting down, right, in chairs. Mm. And the other day in Palm Desert, I walk out, I say to my friend Scott, I go, dude, it's the fucking back of the Alive album. Like, everyone's sitting down. They've got chairs. They probably don't at your shows and Megadeth shows. We never had chairs because it was fucking mosh pit, right?
Unless it's an amphitheater, can't help it at an amphitheater.
These chairs out of here, man. If you don't, the fans will, right? So, but yeah, the Kiss show was just, I was going, oh my God, if there was like 2 people in the front that, remember they had that sign, we love you, Kiss, or whatever it says. Yeah. I forgot what it says. I was thinking, God, look at this, man. I mean, talk about creating a culture of people that it's just, and look, that's what rock and roll is, right? And that's what our bands have done, right? We create a culture. When our fans go there. It's not just going to hear some songs, to see the dudes on the stage. It's like you're part of a tribe, you're part of a culture. And that's what I enjoyed just as much with your show. I was just like, man, I'd seen Ghost about a month before, same thing, Tobias has done such a good job at that, man. I mean, these the Sisters of Sin, right? The young, they get their nun outfits on. I mean, it's a culture, it's like a whole thing,
And he's continually been able to grow that vision, like after their first album, we took them out with Deftones for a little bit, and they had the theatrics already built in, but it wasn't to this level yet. This was back in like 2013. So now 10 years later, it's great to see them grow, and Tobias grow to the point where he can imagine his vision a little bit a little bit more grandiose, and bring in those elements. So I think that comes with growth, as and it's cool when you've seen it from the beginning to where it is now, and it's just couldn't be happier for Tobias and the
like he says, it's fantasy, so there kind of is no end to it, right? You can just kind of keep creating. And second, Kiss was the same thing to some degree. There's no end to what you can create with that, which is pretty cool,
right?
And yeah, I mean, look, it's funny how a couple of my favorite bands, Ghost and Kiss, they were that, they've kind of, there's the man behind the mask, you know what I mean? And even though we know what Kiss looks like, there was always thing when I was a kid, it's like, wow, what do they look like? Because
we only know what they look like because of the Lick It Up video. That's the only reason.
Totally.
That came out.
Totally true, man. It's totally true. And they thought of the whole, like, they put the handkerchief over their face, and it's kind of like, what a great, that's the whole. It
was a good rib on themselves that they put in. Are they allowed to be put? I don't know who wrote the movie, the Detroit Rock City movie that they came out with like in the early 2000s. And then it's going back to like their roots, right? And these fans in high school that are following them and trying to go to the show. I don't know if you saw this movie, but
I did not see it. No, I didn't see it.
At one point, they make a joke like the guys are all like super rock and roll metalhead guys, like Kiss for life, Knights in Satan's Service, all of it, ready to go. And they're like in the car with like some disco kids, and they're like, I wouldn't be surprised if Kiss made a disco song because it's so hot right now. They're like, never would it happen. And then they're like, I'm like watching it go, oh, it happened.
Isn't that funny? I would think the same thing. And you'd appreciate this. So 1978, let's call it, right? So right before, Dynasty came out with I Was Made for Loving You. So that era, was all about, it was, punk rock like the Sex Pistols. So Sid Vicious. And, of course, we know now Glenn Matlock played on the records. Great bass playing. And then, of course, Kiss and disco, right? So those were the three big things going on: punk rock, Kiss, and disco. And talk about this weird convergence. And as a bass player, of course, Gene, he's the ultimate, man. Spit blood, breathe fire, 7-inch heels, and fucking be a monster and play awesome bass, right? And then disco.
Some of the greatest walking bass lines in rock and roll.
Great. It's funny, man, for as big as of a Kiss fan as I am, I hardly played any of their songs growing up because they were too hard to play. I couldn't play them, right? And I didn't know anybody in any bands. I knew guys that had, the Electro Harmonics Big Buff Pie, right? Like that was kind of the first distortion unit, the MXR Distortion Plus, right? These guys could play Ted Nugent, maybe Sweet Home Alabama, some Skinner and stuff. I'm like, fuck, man, these guys are awesome. These guys are great fucking guitar players. I joined one of those bands. I was 12 and they were 16, right? And they always made me a better bass player. I was kind of the younger guy getting pulled up into all the bands, right? I'd get called because I could play good, but those older guys made me better. But nobody played Kiss songs, man. It was just too like
anyone
awesome.
Wanted to touch him. I don't think anyone wanted to touch him.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I remember when we were making Euthanasia, Max Norman, our producer, we were talking about cover songs. And we didn't put any covers on the record, but we did, I think we do Parasite? I can't remember. I think maybe we played Parasite or something, or there was an Ace Frehley song by Kiss, and we ended up covering it, and it just went on like a box set or something later. But I remember Max was saying that. He goes, man, this British accent, right? He's like, man, there's just some songs you never fucking touch because you can't do them better. And we talked about like Hotel California, most Zeppelin songs, most Beatles songs, you don't even touch them, man. And I think Kiss is like that. It's like you just, except maybe Cold Gin and some bar band or something, but other than that, fuck, they're hard to play. In fact, even that, I guess you can't probably hear it, but that, right, the Detroit Rock City,
boom,
on a Saturday night. Right? Dude, and it's flat wound strings with a pick. It's like you listen to it. It's like it's kind of a disco lick. You hear it, it's like this is fucking awesome, man. It's like even you can hear the finger noise sliding around, right? And I'm just like, what a great lick, man. So there you go.
Well, so while we're talking about influences, obviously, and other bass players that we're fans of, what was it like? I mean, I know it can seem like a bit of a typical question, but when was it that you knew you wanted to be a bass player? And like, was there? I feel like for all of us, I could speak for myself. Like, I remember like the first time I realized I wanted to play bass was hearing Cliff Burton's Anastasia bass solo, and then later on, starting to actually feel like I can transcribe some of my favorites, starting to play Les Claypool lines and stuff like that. And that's when I just felt different about the instrument. I was curious to see if you had any moments like that.
That's a great question. For me, it's funny that I wanted to play the bass right from the beginning. I wasn't like a guitar player. So my musical history, like I was about 8 years old, my mom and dad, I grew up on a farm in Minnesota, and it was a big family farm, that's been in our family since the 1800s. So it's like a big centennial farm. And, I think farming was pretty good in the 70s because I was pretty comfortable. We had a lot of nice shit, indoor swimming pool, and it was pretty good, right? So it was nice. Not on a farm,
it wasn't indoor swimming pool.
I learned how to clean a pool, by the way. It was like being the pool guy out. But it beat doing farm work, and it allowed me to go in the basement and play my bass,
There you go.
But and it's funny, I'd go hang out with my mom all the time in the kitchen, which taught me to learn how to cook and bake so I could fucking take care of myself when I'd go out and be a poor musician when I left home and went to Hollywood. And
there's a lot of times where you gotta figure out how to put something together for yourself.
It's like, how do I cook this top ramen? It costs
Exactly.
45 cents. You know?
Yeah, I'm just going to go grab the hot water from the gas station, pour it in there.
Exactly. Eddie Van Halen always talked about musician soup. I've tasted musician soup. Believe me, I know. It's fucking, it's when you're poor and don't have much, you know, but no, so so my parents, they bought a Wurlitzer organ, and which was pretty cutting edge at the time. It had a cassette player in it, which was brand new because back then 8 tracks and vinyl were the thing. So I took lessons from the church organist who lived, you know, a couple of miles down the road, and so, you know, treble clef on the right hand, bass clef on the left hand, and then the foot pedals were bass clef. So, you know, as I'd read these 3-staff, you know, just simple kumbaya kind of songs, you know.
Right.
But you see, you know, it taught me the coordination. I read music. I can read manuscript, you know. So, in fact, as tablature would come in later, I didn't understand it. I was like, how the fuck are they doing here? I don't even know what this is. It took me a while to understand it because I learned manuscript, you know. So I learned that, you know, an E is 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 an E, right? So I learned, you know, later I would move those notes over to the fingerboard of the bass. So to me, I wasn't about, let me just learn the bass. It's like I learned the language of music first, right? Yeah. Through by way of a keyboard instrument. And then I took up the tenor saxophone in 5th grade. Not really because I wanted to play it, but, you know, it's like, okay, you got to either be a jock or a bookworm or, fuck it, I'll join the band. What instrument looks cool? The sax looks pretty cool. So I took that up, you know.
Something sexy about that saxophone, though, man. You got.
Well, I would later learn like that's the one all the ladies like. I should have gotten better at it. But
I think it has something to do with how you blow the horn. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. The old SNL or the real like late night jazz. But no, I blew it on that one. But you know, it wasn't for me. And then then I'm on the school bus. Like me and my brother, we'd ride the bus for like an hour, picked up on the farm, and then taken into the town to go to school. Oh, yeah. So one year, the pastors from our church, his son was driving the bus, and he was cool. His name was Dwight. He had long hair. He's like a rocker dude, and he was listening to WLS AM out of Chicago, which would, because it was AM, it would broadcast, that far over to Minnesota. And that station would play everything from like Chicago, 10cc, these kind of things. But they would also, early Styx, Bachman Turner Overdrive, early Kiss, Shout It Out Loud, Rock and Roll All Night, this kind of stuff. So that, and also Sweet. I remember Sweet Ballroom Blitz when that came out, man. That was a fucking game changer, man. When I heard those guitars, those electric guitars, and the guy singing like, "You ready, Steve? Uh-huh, ready?" It's like, I was just like, I want to do that. Like that
sounds fun.
That sounds really, I don't want to be a fireman or a policeman anymore. I want to fucking do that. That's cool, And so I remember a buddy of mine, like my Sunday school buddy, I'd go over to his house, and his older brother had like a Sunburst, Stratocaster kind of guitar that he bought like out of the Sears catalog or something. And I remember looking at it just like, oh my God, like this is just amazing. And I couldn't figure out how to play it. So, I for some reason, the bass guitar called to me, and on the back of the Kiss records, like Kiss Alive and stuff, it said, Kiss used Gibson guitars and Pearl drums because they want the best. Just like in the back of your record, it'd say Avenged Sevenfold used, Schecter guitars because they want the best, just like Jackson guitars. We know that's an endorsement now, right? But so I wanted a Gibson, and sure enough, in the local newspaper, a guy was selling a Gibson EBO, and it was a cool one, as I would later learn, because it didn't have the tuners didn't stick up like this. They actually they went back this way, so there was like a violin tuner, which was a very, very rare version of an EBO.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen
that. Single pickup, and it sounded like this, right? It was like no treble. I'm like, that doesn't sound like Firehouse off Alive. What the fuck? I must have got sold a bunk instrument, right? How come it doesn't sound like Gene Simmons, But, it was a short scale, so it was good for me as a little 11, 12-year-old kid. And honestly, Johnny, I bought from the music store, because I was such a square and kind of a nerd, I bought like Mel Bay, the Electric Bass Volume 1 book, and I opened it up, and I just started playing, C major scale, right? and learned those notes because I knew the notes of the scale. I could read treble clef pretty good. Bass clef took me, I had to work on it a little bit. But suddenly, now I think always in terms of bass clef. So I already knew music, sharps, flats, key signatures, time signatures, crescendo, and all these, kind of musical terms. So I literally just flipped through the book and kept learning every page. And that's how I kind of self-taught myself a bit the bass because I knew the language of music. And that's probably, I don't know. That's probably the takeaway of my story is I didn't just go, dude, I want to be in a band and get chicks. So what can I play? Give me a bass.
It wasn't just that. It was partly that. It was just,
It wasn't until much. Well, I just wanted to be like Kiss. Yeah. I didn't realize all the rest of the perks of being Kiss until much later, but yeah, I remember being in a band, then I'd have my bands. I started having bands by the time I was 12. I mean, I'm on stage at 12. I'm playing. People are actually paying me in my band by the time I'm 13. So, I mean, I've been on stages my whole life, kind of in the music business. And because again, once I saw Kiss in February of 77, I was 13 and I saw them. And then that just became my life pursuit. It's like, fucking, that's what I'm doing. And for whatever reason, I never had a backup plan. And just because I don't think the good Lord wanted me to have one. I think he said, this is, go west, young man. This is what you're going to do with your life. There's gold in them there hills, go. And I fucking went, and that's it,
That's a beautiful thing, man. Yeah. I mean,
how about you? What was your story playing? I mean, just growing up as a, to get a bass in your hand, how did it happen?
There was a little bit of music in my house. My brother was learning the guitar, and we had like my dad's old nylon string acoustic in the corner, and Casio, just like my watch here, Casio.
Nice. By the way, you got the awesome. I love those watches. Remember, I said to you right away.
Yeah, you were mentioning that when I saw you.
Casio or a Timex.
Yeah, it's the Casio, so it's not the Timex actually. So I did want to but it's the gold edition, so it's a little. It's
a true Americana. Well, it's Japanese Americana.
As I told you before, I just love it because a lot of people who are watch collectors and stuff, they'll have these, exorbitant amount of money worth of watches. But they still love this one. They still love this one.
I've had Witty watches of the same nature, and now lately I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I like these kind of cheap, cool watch. That's why I saw you.
I like it way better. Yeah,
band after my own heart. I love it. Cool.
But yeah, so we had a Casio keyboard in the living room. I don't know. My buddy was like, had a drum set, and he was going to start a band. It's like, oh, I got a keyboard at my house. I'll play the keyboard, and started with that for a hot second. And then I was like, yeah, I think we're going to be more of a punk band. So let's get you something else. And I was like, well, I really like the bass. I like the sound of it. I have dabbled on the guitar at that point, but I didn't want to be a guitar player. So bass, it came up, I think it was my 12th birthday. I told my mother it was like that or a bike. So it took me until about 15 to learn how to ride a bike, by the way, because of this. I said, nah, I want the bass instead. So she went to the pawn shop, got me an Epiphone P-Bass and a Fender combo amp. And then from then on, I just started, similar to you, I also grabbed a beginner's book on bass and started flipping through the pages and just trying to learn that way. I don't think I've ever actually finished that book. I didn't have a lot of music theory in me. It was more about the feel and sound of it for me. Then I just kind of started learning that way, and then surrounded myself by better musicians than myself, as you talked about too. That helped push me each time.
It's funny about that. I had my mom went to the music store, bought a little Fender combo, right? A little Fender 12-inch. I'm like, how do I blow this up like Kiss does? But it's funny, coming from a keyboard background, it's like I bought a piano when I moved here to Scottsdale 30 years ago. The negotiation was, either a billiard table or a piano. All right. So the piano won out, which is great. So it's interesting with a bass, because we learn patterns, right? Like say a G major scale, right? It's a pattern, right? So we can move that pattern, E major scale. You just learn the patterns, right? And you move the patterns around. But on a keyboard instrument, as you would know, you're looking at octaves, right? So everything is in these sort of set of octaves. And I took some piano lessons from this guy. In fact, Dave had found this kid. He was playing with the Boys and Girls Club here in town. He was about 16. years old, and now he works for David Foster. I mean, this guy was really
shit.
a protege. And so he came over and gave me some piano lessons, and he said, think of the piano not as a melody instrument, think of it as a rhythm instrument. And I was like, so like, think about like Honky Cat or something by Elton John. Get back to Honky Cat, get back to Honky Cat, right? And I was thinking, that totally changed my whole scope on playing the keyboard instrument, right? Because it's like, right, thinking it's kind of this more, because I remember the kids.
I do want to say though, you playing the organ and keyboard and piano was very different than I did. I didn't have like lessons, or I was playing single note stuff in the corner of my living room. And I'm pretty sure we had all the keys labeled with the, you remember the, like they used to have like the video, the VHS tape that came with the Casio. And told you to put the like, it was like a beginner's way of learning where the keys were.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like the bouncing ball, you know.
Exactly.
E-A-G.
That's what I was doing, man. I was and every once in a while I have fun putting on like the pre-demo like music on it and just like playing over it.
You get jammed to it. But I can totally see you over there like you're in like video kill the radio star. You're like Mr. K-Rock guy on your piano, you know. That's a funny. I like what you said though. I learned to play the bass in 12. I learned the bike at 15. Yeah. Smart man. That's a true musician, right? That's a true fucking rocker right there. That's great.
Yeah, man, it was fun though. There's a few other things we got to get to before we wrap this up, and you know, so. But we got time. As long as you got time. I don't want to take too much of your time. Yeah. Real quick today, as we're hearing this episode, or as the fans are listening or watching to it right now, it's been a week now since the announcement of your European solo tour that you're going to be doing here here coming up. I read the press release. I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about that and get an idea of what that looks like. Because from the press release, it sounds like you got a group of guys that you've been friends with for a long time, going to play some of the songs that you've done. I assume a lot of them from the Megadeth years.
Sure, for sure.
And then some storytelling in between stuff. Is that...
That's exactly it. Yeah. You know, I started a concept a few years ago. Okay, Ryan Downey. We should probably have a drink for him now since we've mentioned him twice.
Yeah.
So Ryan Downey, back in 2014, he had hit me up. He said, "Hey, I just put out a book, my memoir, My Life with Death, DETH, by the way, as in Megadeth." And he said, "Hey, the promoter wants to bring you to Australia to do like a spoken word tour." I'm like, what the fuck is that? Isn't that like sitting in a coffee shop, like telling stories? Like, well, you know, Mike Myers, like, honey, I married an axe murderer or whatever, right?
Oh, right.
the poet, right? Like, that's what I thought. I'm like, so good. So I'm like, well, look, I can talk, you know, we talked about earlier, guys like you and me can talk about probably damn near anything for about an hour, right? But I figured, well, let me bring my bass. I've done a bunch of clinics. I'll kind of make it clinic storyteller thing. So this tour across Australia is really where I kind of got the idea for it. And I came home from that. I went in the studio in Nashville and recorded Dystopia, the Megadeth album. And which was funny because I recorded that album. It was me and Dave. I sat there and basically recorded the bass to a click. I didn't have any guitars. I didn't have any drums. We hadn't rehearsed the song. He was literally showing me the parts, and I was sitting down just grinding it to the fucking click, right? Whoa. And yeah, like, so it was, which I would say is a pretty good testimony, not only to my sort of, you know, pillar in that band and that sound, but also to me and Dave's ability to sort of finish each other's musical sentences. You know what I mean? And like we would play something and we would stop and go, fuck, that sounds a lot like something we did on Black Friday, right? Or, you know, because in Megadeth, and maybe you guys are here too, after a while you make so many records, the real challenge was to not repeat yourself, right? It's almost like, you know, we don't want this to sound like something we did like on Rust in Peace or something, right? So it's always challenging, right? But so I record that, which was, you know, fun and very painstaking, but it was great. I walked out of that going, I think this is the first record ever in the history of the world where the bass player cut to a click track
before
and again, didn't know the songs, didn't rehearse them, you know, it's not like we were a band and, you know, we were, you know, so I was wild. Like, I was
I
going,
don't think I could do it, dude. I don't think I could do it, Dave. Like
right. It
I'm
was
sitting here listening to it right now. I'm going, I mean, could I painstakingly, as you said, get through it and play a certain ability to it? Sure. But
right.
I guess that leads me to my question on this is when you listen back to that album, do you have any regrets or do you, maybe not regrets, maybe that's too strong of a word, but things that had you'd heard the songs in their totality before, you may have approached them differently?
That is a great question because I don't know about you, but after probably like the late '90s, when we started making records with Dan Huff down in Nashville, in particular the Cryptic Writings record, I said, look, let's get the drums down. Let's have Dave record rhythm guitars because let's face it, in a metal band, the drums and the guitars are the building blocks. They're the foundation.
That's how we always record: is drums, then rhythm guitar, then bass.
Then bass is like pouring the mortar to glue the shit together, right?
Yeah,
so
100%.
and as because then you know how big to get your tone, and you can sort of and like the pop thing, and I've played, as you probably have, some other records where it's more based around the vocal. I'll be like, man, if you can put everything down, I'll come in and play bass last because then I can play the bass part. But then if there's a vocal thing or maybe there's a keyboard thing or whatever, that suddenly you go, you know what, I can get kind of cool and licky right here in this part without which like you said, I wouldn't have thought of that had I not heard it, I think probably the difference with Dystopia and being a metal band is, again, I as a creator of the vocabulary of that song of that band's sound, you kind of know where the turns are. You know what made me realize is like all Megadeth songs are basically eighth notes or 16th notes with triplets in between. Right?
Oh.
They're like this,
yeah.
Right? I mean,
I hear you,
right? I'm simplifying it, but as I did it, because as I was sitting there doing, I'm going, I have probably played every fucking algebraic combination of geometry, and I mean, it was like a math project. I'm not gonna lie, my brain was smoking and hurting after I did it. I mean, it was just kind of like. It was like, okay, how many times can you go digga 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 digga, right? So,
I love how you simplify it, David. So, because I'm thinking about it too. All the songs I listened to, I was like, yeah, he's not wrong.
Right. And in your band, it's the same thing because you guys have a style. There's a thing.
Yeah, for the most part, yeah. I mean, and you end up, and for the most part, I mean, it's not true for everything, obviously, but. A lot of times, at least earlier on too, we wrote in this. I mean, every song was written essentially in the same key because you just go back to that key and it just makes it easier. Modulations come later, as we started to expand our sound and stuff. But early on, it was. I mean, pretty sure the entire Wake in the Fallen record's all in the same D minor.
I remember I had a little band when Megadeth wasn't active, the F5, and we had the same thing. We wrote all these really cool, heavy songs, and the guys were younger than me, right? So this is the transition where I went from being the youngest guy to now I'm the oldest guy, right? And these guys are all fans of mine. So I come in and they're all tuning. They're doing the whole drop D, half step down, drop D, different tunings. They're using diesel amps and Mesa and, the new generation, right? Which obviously you're a part of, right? So the new generation. So I became a student of musicians younger than me, as I've done with your band. I'm like, okay, what are they doing here? What's going on? How are they doing it? And I liked it. In fact, I remember when we took Alice in Chains out with us in 1991, coming home and going, how the fuck are they doing it? That sounds so cool. And then dropping, the E string down to a D and, Man in a Box, gun. There I was like, there it is. That's the sound. And I remember writing some riffs in drop D and bringing them into the band for Countdown to Extinction. And Dave's like, we're not fucking doing that. Right? So they got thrown out immediately. Like, all right, I'll save that for later. Well, figured, I don't know, 10 years later, I have F5. And it's like, I had a cassette sitting right here by my window that had a whole bunch of riffs from Countdown to Extinction, some leftover shit. And I was like, I brought it into F5 and almost all of them worked. I was like, this is fucking great because I could tune them down, put them into some more younger modern ears, and these guys were like, oh, that's fucking great. And it didn't sound like Countdown at all because it was a different tuning and a different thing, you know. So, but yeah, we wrote a record in one key, and we had a producer come in. He goes, after he hears all the songs, and the first thing he says, he goes, "You guys realize all your songs are in the same key?" We're like, fuck, he's right. They are. They're all so then he, you know, as producers do, they come in and they open the hood and they start taking the engine apart and ripping shit apart and, you know, let's put it back together and hopefully it's a better beast, faster on the road and everything else. And he did. He made us a better band, you know, as producers tend to do. And I don't know about you, but producers have been my best bass teachers. You know, they have taught me the most as I've been a recording artist, and we practice different, right? Like if we're just sitting around, we're noodling, right? Like after I saw your show, I pick up the PD, suddenly I'm writing shit. I'm inspired, right? So Thank you for that. So appreciate the inspiration.
Honor.
And likewise, and your right hand technique, I'm like, fuck, man, how does he do that? Like that's like Steve Harris level shit going on right there, right?
Oh man, it's such an honor coming from you, man. I appreciate that.
It really is. It's great, man, because your band is so heavy. You know what I mean? It's such a weighted sound, and the bass just fucking anchors it so well. You know, but then of course when you're practicing to go in the studio, now when you're writing, you're not really practicing. You're just sort of letting it all go and creating and. I love how you guys, I was reading that Revolver interview with you guys, and I was talking to Brian too about, just take acid and go fucking write a record, and all this stuff, just go crazy, and so, but then you go in the studio and now you're practicing parts because you're committing to a line that you're going to need to execute well in the studio. Right. And time is money in the studio. And then, of course, some months go by and now it's time to get the show together. So now you're practicing for a performance, you're getting your gear together and how does this bass fit when I put a jacket on, or if you're in Ghost, it's a costume, or, you know what I mean? It's right. Or Kiss. So, now you're getting into the performance mode, right? So we go through these different stages of playing and they all are part of making us the players that we are, It's, the Mel Bay bass book days are long gone, and now we're in a different phase. But back to your tour that you asked me about, 18 minutes ago. The tour will be exactly what we just did. I'm gonna do. I was gonna ask.
That was pretty much a little teaser into it. I guess on that real quick though, just so the fans who are going to come out in Europe and catch this, like what I guess further, if they want to expect something, are you going to be playing the same songs throughout this tour and telling similar stories, do you think? Or are you just going to be kind of improv in a lot of ways of the stories that come to you when you're playing those songs?
A lot of it's improv. I mean, the fact, all the stuff we just talked about, right, we just made it up, right? We didn't, You didn't send me a script or say, hey, these are the questions. Just fuck it. We just wing it, right? So on stage, it'll be the same thing. And I mean, ultimately, I'd like to make it, this tour is Bass Warrior. I'd like to make it Bass Warriors, where I call you and, hey, dude, let's you and me and maybe fucking Robert Trujillo or Webster from Cannibal Corpse, we all go out and we do this, right? And with one house band, suddenly you can play your tunes, I'll play mine. He can play some of his, and like a bass G3 kind of thing. That's really kind of my ultimate vision for it. That's cool, man. Expand it. Yeah.
You got my number, so.
I do.
You let me know. We'll see what we can do.
First on the list. Bring the keyboard. That'll be for a good conversation. That's
but I still need to put the letters on the white keys for sure.
Hey, I'll bring the saxophone. It's like,
there we go. Now we're getting sexy with it.
Now we're getting going, man. Yeah. So that is it. It's storytelling. It's playing some deep cuts. Andy's the guitar player is a dear friend of mine. We've written several records together. He's a lot of fun, great energy. He's also a president and teacher at a musicians institute over in Italy, a real music school. So he's a very educated guy. A lot of the musicians he gets are from Italy. So they don't even hardly speak English, which is a whole other level of musical thing. When you put your guitars on, you play the same song, you're speaking the same language. And then when the music stops, you're like, Oh yeah, he doesn't really speak much English. Hey Andy, can you tell him to do da 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 da? And
translator. You got to have the translator out there.
yeah, and he's great at it. And so he really, I've done. I had this bass story thing, and that's what I came home from. From Australia, I created bass story, and I did that in America. I did actually a whole world tour. I did South America, Europe, America with that back in 2019, I guess. So, that's kind of how this has been going.
Well, that's really cool, man. I can't wait to see some stuff from it, some clip outs and whatever. And then hopefully you'll do something like that in the States. I'd love to come check it out. The other project you've been working on, I just listened to. We were just talking yesterday to get this recording done. So I went and started listening to the Dieth record.
Yeah.
It was not what I was expecting. I know you described it to me when we were in Phoenix. It was like more thrashy, but it definitely goes on the, like, somewhere between thrash and death metal too, with the vocals the way that they are. And I was like, these are really cool riffs. This is great, but I got to be honest. I'm sitting there listening. I'm like, where's Dave in this? Where's my classic Dave Ellefson bass lines in this? And then all of a sudden, track comes up, Free Us All, and it's such a fun track. There's it goes into several different parts, and it's way more adventurous. And then lo and behold, I get to hear some more Dave Ellefson classic bass lines. So just wanted to ask you about how that project came to be, and let everyone know where they can go check that out too.
Well, it's interesting. Thank you for bringing that up, by the way. So it's interesting how that band. What do you guys tune to? Do you have like a standard tuning that you're?
Most of our songs are in a drop D standard.
Drop D. Okay, so Dieth is C. Which again, musically for me, I always think of it here. Mm-hmm. So it's weird to do the whole drop. I'm cool with, but when you move an instrument to a whole other tuning, it's weird for me because when I see third fret, I think of C, right? Or I think of G or whatever, right? So to sort of musically, I hate to call it dumbing down, but kind of just dumb down and sort of forget the musicality of the instrument and just go, I don't know, third fret, bro, there's the note, you know what I mean? It's like, I've never done very good with that kind of thing. So what I did with that band to make the record, is I tuned up from, so if this is a B, I tuned up a half step so that now the low B is basically kind of my, my new E string, if you will, right? And so that, rather than tuning down, I tuned up. Mm-hmm. And, like you say, Free Us All, it's funny, I was kind of going for was kind of using my jazz band stuff, that kind of this, this walking thing, right? And
I could see the walk, so I know what it's doing, but I still can't.
Yeah,
but I see what it is there.
You see what it is, right? And really, that's inspired by the drums, right? Because the drums are doing this kind of a swing thing. So that's where I went with that. And then there's a break in the middle where I do this kind of Aerosmith. I know you can't hear it, but this sort of Sweet Emotion kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Where so I'm kind of going to kind of borrowing this 70s Aerosmith vibe. So that was a tune that, was able to really kind of go not even to vintage David Ellefson, if you will, vintage Megadeth stuff, but it was somewhere else.
Yeah, but it was still
right.
I said it a little bit more grossly, but it's just the idea that, like, for me, I mean, we talked about Metallica too in the recordings before. Like, you knew of how amazing Cliff was because he had his standout parts with the distorted bass, like, and For Whom the Bell Tolls and Anastasia, as I mentioned. But it wasn't as prominent, unless you were looking for it as a fellow bassist. It wasn't as prominent in the mixes on the albums we listened to. But with Megadeth, I always was able to find your bass and what it was doing, a lot easier, like everything on Rust in Peace and Countdown to Extinction. And I mean, we talked about it in Phoenix too. I mean, how cool is it that your bass riff from Peace Sells ends up being the MTV News fucking thing for a decade,
I mean, that's one of those freebies in life, right? In fact, I remember, I might have told you this, we had the apartment that me, Dave, and Chris Poland lived at. And, where Chris is sitting there doing the dishes in the kitchen, and all of a sudden we always had MTV. I always had the TV on in the background, right? Usually the MTV, and one day they're like, MTV, do. You heard it first, right? And Chris was like, "Holy shit, was that our song?" And then we wait, and then the next time they do it, it's the DJ scratch, right? MTV News, chicka, chicka, chicka. You heard it here, right?
Yeah.
You heard it first. So it would always go back and forth. And the truth of it is that, that thing was on MTV for the years that we were basically on tour. So I missed the whole fucking thing. Like I would hear it once in a while, but literally I could probably count it on a handful of times.
I heard it every morning before I went to school. Every morning I had MTV on, and there was that Kurt Loder would come on and talk about whatever was going on. Because that's how we got our news back then. There wasn't the internet,
right?
That was how
before Blabbermouth was MTV News. You heard it. You heard it first.
Got a little bit of that one. I heard a little bit of that one. That was good.
Yeah, right.
No, but,
it's funny with that bass because and I got to see your basses up close and personal there at the show. But a traditional Fender bass, you can't really play that line because of this little right. So I recorded it on a BC Rich Mockingbird, which the neck really sticks out, right? So you can play because your hand lays a little flatter on the neck, right? So I created that Jackson Kelly bird for that purpose, to kind of have that Mockingbird, Thunderbird kind of thing. So I could pull that, I could put that bass on for the encore and play the part better. And usually when I would go out and play with, one of these more traditional basses, I'd always have to kind of stand different. And it's like Gene when he breathes fire, right? He gets in his position and he really studies it, and then he fucking does it, right? So it's like P-Cells is the same thing. I'd come out and I'd have to kind of get situated and stand in a way and get the thing, and then because if I didn't, I'd fuck that little note up, and I'm like, come on, this is the one line I can't fuck up. I need to probably play this one pretty good.
It's not masked by everything else. I'm standing on my own right here.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I know the feeling, man. I know the feeling.
Yeah, right. This is over to you, buddy. You got this, right? Okay, I do. No.
Yeah, man. I mean, going back to all those classic records, like I said, that I grew up loving and stuff. And real quick before there's just the last couple things I definitely want to get into. I wanted to get your opinion again. Let's bring up Mike Portnoy for one last time, probably a couple more times.
Love you, dude. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah. Was it 2 weeks ago now? There was the announcement that Mike was returning to Dream Theater.
Right.
I just wanted to. Have you had a chance to talk to him about this a little bit? I shot him a text the other day, and I was, it took me a minute to reach out to him, but I'm just happy for him, and I can't wait to see what is in store for Dream Theater moving forward.
Well, it's funny because you guys were kind of at the epicenter of when it all kind of went the other way, right?
Man, that story, we've told that story over and over, man. We were like, dude, like, we love you, Mike, but like, we're gonna go a different direction. Don't leave Dream Theater. Don't leave Dream Theater. And then he's like, I did it, and I was like, okay, that was on you, man.
I know. Leap, there is no net. Sorry about that. Yeah. No, listen, and I get it with Mike. Look, he did everything in Dream Theater, right? And that's no disrespect to anybody else, but he did a lot. Like he said, bands are not democracies. Someone has to be a leader. He was really kind of the de facto leader. He wrote a lot of the lyrics, if not all of them. He ran the band, let's say it, right? And every band's got one. Every band's got a guy who leads, kind of leads the charge, right? And so he did that. And so I think when he would call me, he would talk to me all the time, and he would say, man, I'm on the bullet train in Japan. It's fucking great. We're flying first class. And, he enjoyed not having to work so hard.
Yeah, sure.
and just be a member. Marty Friedman said the same thing when he joined Megadeth. He goes, dude, I'm so glad to just be in a band where I can just play guitar, and I don't have to run the band and do all the work and do all the stuff, So I get it, where, so I know that was a big part of it. And then he loved playing with you guys, and you guys made a great record together, man. That was
thank you, man.
Killer record. So
yeah, he came in at the end there and really, really helped us out. So we weren't sure when we had that record done, but we weren't sure if we were going to record it and put it out. It took steps after losing the Rev for us to get our feet back on.
Sure.
So And Mike was an integral part of that. Absolutely. Helping us get us back on feet. Nothing but love for Mike. And like, I enjoyed playing with him too. You know, there was other factors, of course, that was not one of them, you know, was our friendship and love, you know?
No, look, I mean, you guys went through, you know, as did Metallica, other members, where someone, you know, passes away, a key role and a member, and, you know, the writers and stuff. So yeah, it's a huge transition. But, you know, Mike, it's funny, we were on a metal with the three of us, or four of us actually have a Metal Allegiance text thread on our phone, you know, and my son is a huge fan, right? He's a total prog nerd, my son, right? He's 27, and he's a huge Dream Theater fan. He's playing me all this Dream Theater stuff that, you know, I'm aware of, but I don't listen to that stuff that much. I mean, Pull Me Under was kind of my big song that I loved of theirs. And Mike had me actually do a spoken word thing on one of the songs, because he would always do kind of a 12-step recovery song. So he had me at NAMM one year. He asked me to do a bit to me and Satriani and a bunch of guys. We kind of did a little, you know, spoken word thing on a Dream Theater record. So, and then Mike and I, you know, played on a ton of things together. But suddenly Roman goes, "Oh my Dad, did you hear the news?" I said, "No." And usually when he says, "Did you hear the news?" it's someone died. Like some tragedy.
It's always the bad. Yeah, it was. I will say it was a breath of fresh air to get some good news that week.
Right. I was like, the Cardinals lost. You know, something bad happened. You know.
Well, so, that doesn't make me sad.
That's just not even news. That just happens all the time. And so he tells me, he goes, Mike Portnoy rejoined Dream Theater. I'm like, no shit. And then I looked at our thread, because we were chatting about something for our show coming up, and you know, Skolnick's congratulating him, and then Mike comes back. He goes, "Guys, I'm so sorry I'm late. Obviously, my phone's blowing up." So yeah, we sent our congratulations, and I said, "Yeah, now he'll probably charge us a lot more to be in the band." You know, now his rate went up. You know, so. But I tell you what, at those Metal Legion shows, man, Mike is a fucking beast, man. I mean, we'll do these shows are 2.5 hours long, and he's up there fucking hammering through it and playing. And that's what I realized at Metal Legions. We, you know, in the beginning, we would do, it was Metal Masters. It was when Mark Mengy still worked for Samson, and he'd hooked me up with Harky stuff. And we were doing these kind of clinic vibe, right? And he called it Metal Masters. And it was around the time we were doing the Big Four. So Kerry King would join us, Phil Anselmo, the Anthrax guys, etc. And I remember Portnoy came into, you know, right at the beginning to play. And like, as soon as like somebody started playing some Slayer song, Mike would go, "Oh, I know that song," and he'd play it, you know.
he knows them all. The encyclopedia.
Everything.
The encyclopedia comes out.
That's how he plays with everybody. You know, like the Peter Gabriel bass player and all these guys, because he's a fucking fan. And you go to his house, it's basically like Guitar Center meets Tower Records, man. I mean,
it's insane.
10 drum kits, you know, like then all the CDs and 8 tracks. You're like, Jesus, dude. It's like in the movie theater, you're like, why leave Casa de Portnoy? It's like, this is pretty awesome here, you know?
Yeah, he set it up pretty nice, didn't he?
It's pretty awesome, man. It's pretty fucking awesome, I gotta say. Rock star drummer, for sure.
For sure. So last couple things I want to get back into. I keep saying last couple things, and we go off on some other fun shit. But
yeah, because we like to talk.
That's what it's here for. You know? But yeah, so real quick, let's go back to Megadeth a little bit, because I don't think we got the final answer on if you felt on the Dystopia album you felt like you would do something different. Let's answer that question first.
You know, here's I guess the thing. Those parts. You know, there's certain lines, right, where, you know, like Holy Wars, right? There's only one part to play, that, right? It's not like you're going to go.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you're not gonna riff around it. There's not. Yeah, I mean that's the riff. That's the riff.
That's what you're playing. We're all jumping in. Yeah. We're all fucking doing this together.
Right.
So a lot of Dystopia was similar, right? Where you know the lines are the riff, you know, and there's not a lot of room to deviate. There was a couple of things. Poison of Shadows was fun. It's a ballad, so you could kind of hold some big whole notes and do some things that were fun. You know, do a little some passing tones and a little bit of, you know, little movements and stuff. Dystopia was a pretty set. I mean, Dystopia is kind of a Hangar 18 model, you know, same sort of thing where it has this sort of, you know, kind of down picking intro piece, and then, the verses and stuff. And then at the end, it's sort of guitar shred mania, it's sort of a duel,
Right.
But, so I think I felt pretty good about it. I mean, it's when you're working with Dave, he's got the whole thing in his head. And I remember Chris Adler told me, Nick Raskolinis was in there for a while, who's obviously a killer producer and has made great records with the Foo Fighters and Rush and everybody. Mm-hmm. But I guess they kind of decided they weren't going to work together pretty early on, because Nick wanted to hear, give me the chorus, kind of where's the money shot of the song? And, and I think for Dave, he's like, fuck it, it's up here. I got it up here, and, that's, Dave's the kind of guy where, he's ended up producing most of his stuff by himself, him and Chris Rakestraw, because he's not a guy that after, I think in the more recent years, he knew what he wanted. He knew how he wanted to put it down, and he wasn't you can't live in someone's head. It's like, look, put it out here so we can discuss it and meet on terms and kind of work on it together. And that wasn't how he wanted to make records. He wanted his ideas. And, I think in the early days, he always felt maybe a bit compromised of other people that wanted to have him go, managers and producers and stuff. So what I saw, especially with Dystopia and even the last record, was, wanting to just, he kind of needed to self-produce. It was the only option, to do that. So, so it went. And on Dystopia, I felt like, we had, we were rebuilding the band. In fact, there was a moment I was literally sitting right here in the office talking to Dave, because we had a manager who kind of came and went for a minute. He was a previous manager back in the 90s, and and it was, so there's like, we don't have a manager, we don't have a guitar player, we don't have a drummer, and I'm just sitting here talking to Dave. I go, well, kind of ironic that it's just back to you and me again, isn't it? After everything. And he said, yeah, it is, isn't it? And so, it's kind of like, well, when worse comes to worse, it's the two of us. We'll get through it. We'll rebuild the beast, And Chris Adler was standing at the ready to play on the record because he's a big Megadeth fan, and he did a great job on that. And then, Dave called me one day and he goes, I've got we hired 5B, we hired a new manager, and Dave said, listen, find me a guitar player. That's your first job as my manager, find me a guitar player. So there was a very short list of people, and suddenly Dave calls me a couple days later, all enthusiastic. I found a guitar player. I said, yeah, who? He goes, Kiko. Do you know Kiko Lorio? I said, I know Kiko. I just played with him in South America on a little all-star tour. He goes, you know him? I said, yeah, I got his number right here. You want me to hit him? He goes, fuck yeah, do it. So I hit him. I said, hey, Kiko, want to join Megadeth? Which, when you get the call for that band, it's not like, do you want to join? It's like the Mafia calling, hey, kid, you're in the band. Get your fucking guitar. It's like, hey, Kiko, you're in Megadeth. When can you get to Nashville? That was kind of more of the conversation. And he had just come home from an anger tour. He was sick. He wasn't feeling good. And I said, look, here's the 3 songs. I forgot what it was. Tulamon, Holy Words, something, Symphony, whatever. Tornado Souls, maybe. So look, make these videos. Send them over. I'll pass them down to Dave. And Dave already has mine made up. It's like, it's done, So that was it, So we just all made our way to Nashville. Like I said, I went to Australia first and did that spoken word thing and came back. And that was a good season for me, though, to just sort of step out, and do a lot of stuff on my own, because the band had some downtime. And that was when I learned how to go out and do what we just, put on sale here with this Bass Warrior tour, was to learn how to just go out and be my own man, sort of own the stage, own the songs, do some storytelling, and go out and have fun with it. I learned that when we were doing acoustic stuff with Megadeth back in the late 90s. We were in Japan, and Nick Menza, he goes, I think Nirvana, a lot of these guys were doing the MTV acoustic stuff, right? And so Nick Menza said, he goes,
Unplugged was pretty popular there.
Was cool, yeah. So Menza said, he goes, why don't we fucking do Unplugged, man? Because we're getting ready. We're in Japan and we're going to get ready to go to South America. He goes, let's do it. Let's play acoustic. And this was on Cryptic Writing, so like songs like Trust and Tulamon. We had a pretty good repertoire of stuff that worked, And one of the songs that was actually really fun to play acoustic was She-Wolf, of all things. because it kind of took on this flamenco. Marty would play these sort of flamenco lines, and it sort of turned into like Charo, and it was a lot of fun. But we put the stools out in Yokohama. I remember we did it. We pulled middle of the set. We pulled 4 stools out, and we come out with our acoustic guitars, and we played 4 or 5 songs in the middle of the show, and the fans loved it. And that really turned a corner. And I remember our guitar tech, it was Marty's tech. He had mentioned, he goes, this acoustic thing works for Megadeth because you're used to blowing volume and sound out at the audience the whole time, right? So you're sort of pushing them back. And when you play acoustic, you sort of invite them all in, and they get real close. And he used this sort of this physical visualization of it. And I was like, God, that really is it. So even on this Bass Warrior tour, as much as we'll be playing, in full rock regalia kind of thing, I like that there's these storyteller intimate moments, which are somewhat challenging in foreign countries, right? Sometimes I'll have translators, right? When you're in Hungary and Poland and,
Now you're taking this one to Europe too.
Yeah, taking it to Slovakia. I'm like, sometimes I'll have some translators if I need, and then of course it's hard for me to not say so many words because I fucking talk all the time. But it's fun to to tell the stories, and sometimes even some guys, some fucking headbanger down there shouting something or asking a question. Even field a couple of questions and make it a little Q&A. It's a lot of fun, man. Again, breaking it down to invite the people in rather than always just pushing them back like we do at the big rock concerts.
Right. No, I hear you on that, man. We did a little acoustic performance some years back, like a little Nokia thing. That was really cool. One of the things you just mentioned I found interesting is you hit up Kiko to join the band.
Right.
But after you had left in the early 2000s, first of all, I'll come back to that actually. But then you said Willie was the one that reached out to you to come back. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So 2010, Willie reached out to me to come back. Willie and Sean Drover. They really are the ones that got me and Dave reconnected again. And literally, I mean, Dave just called me and they called me and they said, hold on, we're going to put Dave on. Dave picks up. Joopy calls me, Jupiter Jr. And hey, Joopy, And then I was like, hey, dude, what's up? He goes, so, and he said, look, having a party, changing of the seas. And I said, listen, it's done, dude. I'll throw a bass in my car. I'll drive over tomorrow to San Diego and we'll get in the room and we'll jam. And so it was done. It was funny how, you could stand at a standoff for years, right? Like we did for several years.
So that was the question that I had though. What was that first departure about?
Well, the group ended. Dave disbanded the group in 2002. He had some personal things that that he was straightening out in his life. And then when he put the group back together in 2004, I think the original intention was that he wanted to go solo, or he had some people around him saying, why don't we just do the Dave Mustaine solo show? Well, the record contracts and publishing contracts were all in the name of Megadeth. And they're like, hey, listen, the name Megadeth is what we signed. That's what we want. That's how we're going to get our money back off of this deal, right? Not somebody going solo in the band. So it turned out to be that, I was approached about it, but it was a very different arrangement. Everything was different. And I just said, look, in good conscience, I can't get on board with that, especially as being an owner of the band and a founder of the group and everything. It's like, I'm sorry, I can't do it. And, look, we tried to work towards some kind of of how that would, either
a compromise of some sort.
Something. And it just wouldn't go there. They're like, no, this is it. This is what it is. So finally, look, when you're, as a band is not only just a musical partnership, you become sort of a corporate partnership. You've got, there's legal stuff. There's, you're a shareholder of a company. There, you're now it's IBM shit, right? So,
right.
When there's
all the stuff we weren't thinking about when we were picking up that bass book.
Totally right. Yeah, all the reasons we didn't want to go to college and learn about all this shit. Now we're in a band and we got to learn about all this shit. So
maybe I should have stayed in school a little longer.
Fuck, I should have listened to that business class. Damn it, So here we are. Unfortunately, my dad was a great businessman, and so he was always very, was always on me about it. And look, in our band, and I guess probably all bands, sometimes you have to compromise. You go along to get along, and sometimes you got to, give a little to get a long, instead of thinking of everything in terms of short go range, you look at the long range. And I was in Megadeth for life. To me, it's a gang, it's a band, it's a band. Not looking to go anywhere else. I was never looking to go solo. I was never that guy. Well, I'll do this for a couple of years, then I'll go solo. It's like I was never. And I'm when I'm in, I'm all in. So the times when I've been away from it, it's again this one actually wasn't as bad, to be honest with you, because I was kind of like, well, I've seen this movie before 20 years ago. I was not participating in the band then. So for now, I kept active with stuff. I did other stuff even while I was back in the group, and always respectful. Never to, you don't trump the brand, right? You never try to be bigger than the brand. You always stay under it, within the confines. And I've always been a real ambassador to the group. David always called me that. He goes, Junior's the ambassador, keeper of the facts. He's the guy who kind of knows all the stuff. So that was also a big part of my role, not just being the bass player. Mm-hmm. And as a role in a band is more than just a musical role. You're a personality caveat to a lot of things. You could be the peacekeeper, you could be the icebreaker guy, whatever. We all have these different roles because of our personalities, and how we sort of jigsaw puzzle fit together. So that was mine. The part I was talking about with Kiko, that would have been about 2014. So about 4 years after I was back. Chris Broderick and Sean Drover had left the group, and that was when we were rebuilding to make Dystopia, basically. So,
right. And then you did another couple records. And you did another couple records with them, and then was it a couple years ago now? A couple years ago, yeah. Then a couple years ago, we had our Party of the Way, which again, I didn't think was necessary at all, but whatever. Look, being in a band, as we go through seasons of getting along, not getting along, being burned out on the road together, not wanting to. It's a marriage, man. It's a marriage.
It is,
and actually, it's a marriage that you never really get out of.
It's like being in the mafia, dude. It's like, successful, especially a metal band. It's like, so
because you'll always be attached. Dave Ellefson and Megadeth will always be attached. It doesn't.
Always.
That's even the first departure, and then this more recent one. It's
like you have kids.
We talked about Mike Portnoy. Every Dream Theater was still attached to Mike Portnoy, and vice versa for over a decade. Yeah.
Well, and that's just it. Again, like it is you build a family together, and your offspring are your songs and your records. Mm-hmm. And that's what you will always share forever. And let's face it, our songs will outlive us, right? Yes. They will live past us. So to some degree, that's what you leave behind. And as you sail on to the next universe after you die, we've created something that's bigger than us, and I guess that's probably the challenge, is to, as best you can while you're here on planet Earth, try to be a good steward of it, take care of it. As you have your differences, try to resolve them. And it's funny, when I saw my friend KK Downing leave Judas Priest, and I became friends with him. I was friends with him, and then have rekindled a good friendship with him here in more recent years. And we did a show together over at his steel mill over in Wolverhampton, and it was great to get it back on stage. He was excited to be playing, which is now, then he put KK's Priest together. He's got records out again. He's back as a recording artist, been touring again. I just said to him, I said, "You're not done, dude. Get your fucking guitar. Let's go." It's like, that was me calling my idol. Dude, get your guitar. Let's go. There's more. There's no way Johnny Christ, David Ellefson, and fucking, KK Downing are sitting around the house not playing music anymore. It's like, that day's never going to happen, till the day we die. This is what we fucking do, whether full-time, part-time, once in a while,
whatever, but it's
whatever.
It's part of the DNA. It's part of the DNA. It's not.
It
going
just
anywhere.
is, man. It just is, yeah. So
yeah, I mean, are you still talking to anybody in that camp though, or has all ties been kind of severed? Or
I don't. Kiko's been a good friend. He and I have chatted a couple of times. He'd reached out to me, and Kiko's not afraid of anything. He's a grown up. He's look, he he's run Angra. He was, I shouldn't say run. I mean, but he was the rock star guitar player of that band. So like he's owned bands and, once you've been doing this a while, it's not like you're just a musician. You're like a business owner, right? Like every band I've started, pretty much every band I've been in, I've been a founding member. I've started them. I've put the corporations together. I've done the press packages. I call the agents and the managers. I invest my own money in them. So to me, it's just constantly recycling the funds back into the next endeavor. And that's how I roll, man. It's just,
that's how an entrepreneur rolls.
That's what we do, right?
Yeah.
I buy real estate. I do various things. Yeah. If I gotta start a coffee company, another band. Yeah. Why not? So that's just, and again, I learned that from my dad. Farming was very entrepreneurial, especially to run a big agricultural business and like bands are the same way, feast or famine, right? It's, we have hit records, we have not so hit records. We've got, suddenly the world loves heavy metal and then sometimes they don't. And, so you
guys rode a lot of those waves, man. Like
we did, man,
over the years. Because I mean, we talk about it, we're like, man, if we were around 10 years earlier, like what could have that been? Because by the time there was the new metal phase that came in the early 2000s for a minute. And then there's a few bands like we've mentioned here on the show through this last little bit that have stood the test of time through that. But it hasn't ever come back to the way it was in the late 80s, early 90s, where it was pop culture.
A buddy of mine, Ken Mary, who was playing in Alice Cooper's band when they took Megadeth out in '87. He sells tour for us, right? And he lives not too far from here in Phoenix, and we reconnected when I moved out here in the '90s. And he said it one day. He goes, "Brother, we got in under the wire." And I was like, God, that is a good way to put it, man. And you did too, man. I mean,
we did too, in a different way, for the album sales and stuff. I just meant more for like I said, the idea that as we talked about, MTV, everything was all metal.
Right.
Like, that was pop
for
culture
sure.
in this country.
Well, the thing for me, Johnny, was I would watch these bands on MTV, especially in the late '80s. These kind of one or two hit wonders, hair metal bands, let's call them, who would just blaze up fucking the charts, and you'd see them on MTV. And I'm like, what the hell? How come they got so popular? They're on Atlantic Records or whatever. And then here we are, we're out, doing these kind of playing punk rock theaters, and grinding it out on the road in a motorhome, and then we got in the buses and trucks, of course, being on Capitol Records, and it's like you and Warner and whatnot. It's like you get to the big dance, but it's you're just going, God, when is it going to get easier? And then all these years later, we're still here, and I say we, meaning the legacy of Megadeth is still here and thriving. Whereas a lot of those bands during the '90s, once Seattle music showed up, I mean, they were flushed out to the sea. I mean, it's like goodbye, new sound, Nirvana, Pearl Jam. And then they say Korn, Cold Chamber, Disturbed, Godsmack, new wave.
90s, early 2000s, right?
Totally. Yeah. That's why, again, when you Shadows Fall, Dragon Force, Lamb of God, when you guys came in your respective positions of that hierarchy, you guys for sure at the top of that, that was a reset of like fucking kids are into metal again. They really like fucking heavy metal again. And in a lot of ways, when Megadeth disbanded in '02 and then, again, this put back together in '04, you and Lamb of God and Trivium and, maybe Blow Up for My Valentine and stuff, like you guys fucking reset the thing. It's like you guys actually recharged the whole thing and reignited it, which gave, Megadeth.
Felt that way. We were young, so it kind of felt that way a little bit. I appreciate you saying that. But as you're saying it too, we got to give another shout out to Slipknot in that respect. Because at the end of that new metal scene, they had, the song Wait and Bleed, where they went and played on late night TV in a couple places.
Yeah.
And I've heard from several other people. I'd heard them a little bit before this, but, a lot of people, that's how they discovered them. They were just like watching late night TV and going, what the hell am I seeing? And it was still, it was Iowa was still had some influence of nu metal, I guess, maybe by imagery, but the music was clearly different, right? We all recognize it.
Yeah, but with the Kiss factor, let's call it, right? Like the new, the masked band concept
but those performances around Wait and Bleed definitely perked some ears again for a second and went like, wait, metal's making another shift. And then shortly after that, like a few years later, is when the bands that you mentioned with us in that thing had started bringing back the guitar element in a lot of ways to it. There was always guitar in it. Don't get me wrong. And some of the coolest, most innovative ways to do it came out of nu metal, but it just wasn't. It wasn't as steeped in tradition as say the bands that would come later. In like
you piqued an interesting thought, which is, when I was working at PV doing artist relations from 2002 to 2010, I started to realize, metal bands sell fucking instruments, which is why you and me have signature instruments, right? Because
right.
We sell through to the cash register, right? And I noticed it because I started working with Slipknot. Kid Rock, Slipknot, the bands that were blowing up in the 2000s, right? And we did some promotions with Nickelback, which were great because they connected. They were a rock group, right? But I remember we did something with Kenny Chesney. We tried something with country, like some kind of web-based promotion. And dude, it didn't work at all. And I realized, as big as country music is, and it's huge, it doesn't connect to, it's not an influencer for people to go play guitar and go play music. You could be a small metal band and be fucking super influential. And there are a bunch. And Periphery, these bands, and I say small meaning in the scheme of next to, Beyonce or Metallica, their numbers are not that. But they are so freaking influential that like a kid watches a Periphery video and he's out buying the same amp, guitar, pick, cable, cutting his hair that way. Like truly an influencer, and that's what metal does, right? Metal, we are influencers with our music, what we play, shirts we wear, or whatever. You know what I mean? So it's podcasting, right? So there it is. So
yeah, man. Well, I think that's a good note to end it on for today. I'll have to have you back again because I could go another fucking 10 days with you for sure.
Let's do it. We'll pick a new guy to drink to. But Mike, thank you for this one. We appreciate it.
Mike. Oh, lastly, we were talking about departures real quick. We did mention Slipknot. I don't know if you know any of the guys there, but did you saw the news a couple days ago that they parted with Jay?
I was shocked when I saw that, and it's interesting. I met the bass player guy a couple years ago, and I remember we did a Knotfest Mexico City in let's call it 2017 or so, right? And I remember hearing those guys warming up down down not the hall, but whatever, the fucking tent or wherever these dressing rooms are set up, right? And hearing that bass player and Jay playing, I was like, holy fuck, these guys are good. I mean, like. Yeah. Chili Peppers, jazz, fucking killer level. I was like, man, I was impressed. That was one of the most impressive rhythm things I'd heard in a long time. And, seeing them live, of course, great. Right. I mean, Jay really gave that thing a pop, so I was shocked to see that. I hope everybody's okay.
Right.
That's always my hope is when these things happen. I hope everybody's okay. And, haven't been through that myself, a time or two. It's, for whatever the reasons are that transitions happen in bands. You just hope that, that it's good and everybody lands well, So,
right.
Do they have a new drummer yet or not?
I haven't seen an announcement yet. I haven't seen an announcement. Maybe by the time this comes out, but on this day that we're recording, I have not seen anything yet and haven't spoken to anybody about it. So I was just, aside from just reading.
Well, we're pretty sure one thing, it won't be Mike Portnoy.
Oh, yeah, it won't be Mike. That's for sure.
He's back in Dream Theater. Congratulations to Mike in Dream Theater.
Congratulations to Mike and the rest of the boys in Dream Theater. And as you said, I hope everything's working out all right for everyone involved in the Slipknot stuff. But
yeah, for sure.
I'm sure all of it will come out in the months to come, whatever. Hopefully it's all good news and not bad news. Yeah. But I want to thank you again so much, Dave.
Totally, dude.
To have you on the show, man. Really appreciate it and getting to know you even more. And I'm sure many more times with and without the cameras, right?
Yeah, let's do it, man. Anytime, JP, anytime. On camera or just throwing down, hanging out, showing our watches.
I
got a Movado.
What do you got?
I got a Movado. Mine's actually like way more expensive than yours, and this is really an expensive watch.
Oh, you're just going to show that off at the end of the show like that?
No. I'm just saying. I've had some really expensive ones. This one's like a Toyota, you know, it's not even a Tesla anymore, you know. It's like, but you've got the ultimate fucking bitchin' one.
This is a timepiece. This is a timepiece for many reasons.
That's the shit. That's like breaking out your 67P bass right there. That's awesome, man.
That's right next to it, man. Thank you again. Hey, everybody at home, make sure you go check out, if you're in Europe, go check out some of these solo stuff with Bass Warrior coming out. And again, thank you so much. And to everyone at home, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. As always, we'll see you next time. Cheers.